marketing, they're already doing it. Like, your game is your first and best marketing tool.
Hello, I'm Brian Francis.
And I'm Beth Elderkin.
And welcome to GDC Side Quest. Beth, do you have a favorite side quest in a video game?
Oh my goodness, I have so many, but if I'm going to pick one, it is a little bit of a cheat because it's many side quests in one and it's a DLC, but I'm gonna have to go with Citadel from Mass Effect 3. It is just such a beautiful closure to a great story that I had followed from beginning to end. You know, you get to spend time with the characters, you get to see all of them together again, and it's just such a love letter to the franchise.
Yeah, just one of those, like, just you can tell with that whole DLC that the people making the game were just having a blast. You could feel not just their love for the series, but their love for working on it and every inch of it. For one of my favorites, I guess I'm also cheating because this is technically like a 2 or 3 stage quest if you go by name, but I'll call it the Cave of Dreams from The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It starts with you like taking on a normal monster hunting contract, which are just sort of like these normal like short loop game contracts that take you out into interesting areas and have you fight interesting monsters. So it's just like dozens of others in the game, but then midway through you get press ganged into helping a Jarl's son with this Viking vision quest and floating ghost whales.
I've put so many hours into The Witcher 3, and I don't think I've come across that one, which is just a testament to how amazing that game is. Like, even with Baldur's Gate 3, I've played through it a million times. I have hundreds of hours. But every time, like, for example, when you are exposing Kaga with the druids, every single time I did it a little bit differently, and I discovered something new. Like, I had played it 4 or 5 times before I discovered that you could expose the druids and still have Kaga be nice to you.
The Cave of Dreams, I was looking it up because I happened on it organically when I was playing, but I looked it up and people said they missed it completely because it's actually like a very narrow window of game that you can trigger it in because the characters do die during a major story event later. But we're not just here to talk about video games, and boy, could I keep going with side quests if we just stayed on video games all day. For the folks at home, GDC Side Quest is a new project from us and our friends at GDC Festival of Gaming to bring you more conversations about the whole ecosystem of the video game industry. Beth, you'll be hosting these episodes. What kind of topics do you want to hit?
I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. I really want to cover every process from beginning to end of what it takes to create, distribute, and share and experience a video game. Video games are such a big passion of mine. It's why I came into GDC Festival of Gaming in the first place. And I want to cover everything from, initial programming and iteration and storyboarding all the way through marketing, community management, live ops, even investing and publishing, just all of the different components that come together to support and uplift these beautiful pieces of work that are created.
Yeah, and this is kind of something, this has to do, I think, wandering a little afield here, but the part of the GDC Festival of Gaming message has been about supporting what y'all have called the whole B2B ecosystem. And I'll confess, to me, that can sound clinical, but I mean, I talk to devs all the time about like the close relationships they have with their marketing partners, their publishing partners, how investors can sometimes be, the bane of a studio, or they can be, the thing that makes a dream happen, when everyone's firing on all cylinders. And there's just a lot of conversation to have there, and it's great that you guys want to join us on this podcast and making them happen.
I've had an ethos for as long as I've worked for GDC that existed before we were rebranded as Festival of Gaming and focusing on the full ecosystem. And that is, if you help bring games to life, you are a developer.
Who is your first guest on GDC Side Quest?
I was extremely fortunate to chat with Bekah Saltsman. She is the CEO of Finji, and we talked about game marketing, particularly for smaller and indie developers, and really what it means to create, a marketing campaign, especially on a lower budget, where you prioritize your money, if you're going to use money at all. And there's a few interesting surprises in there that really, really stood out to me.
All right, listeners, that's enough for me. I'll let Beth and Rebecca take you into the world of indie marketing.
Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Bekah Saltsman, the CEO and co-founder of Finji. That's the studio behind games like Tunic, I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, and the upcoming Usual June. Bekah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I want to get started by asking how things are going over at Finji. I know you just announced Usual June. Congratulations. Tell me what's going on with that one.
A lot, actually. So we are in production right now, actually outside of my office. We call it Big Screen Friday, but it is Thursday because we have tomorrow off. But we're sort of like going through all of the sort of new bosses that are coming in, new creatures that are coming in, the scenes that are getting put together. So there's especially like you spend a lot of development doing a lot of R&D, a lot of look dev, a lot of experimentation, and at a certain point it is just production. So we are really at the like content part, and just the scenes coming together and the story coming together. So it's really exciting. I was sad to leave Big Screen, not Friday, Thursday, because the things that the team are showing off it's just so cool. Like every week it's so cool.
Looking at the first trailer, I was so blown away. It kind of reminded me a bit of Beyond Good and Evil mixed with, we have a lot of summer camp coming of age stories, particularly with femme presenting characters. And it's just been a joy to see because it just takes me back to when I was that age.
Well, and there's also this thing, it's like, I really want to play games about people and places that I'm familiar with. So when we went into Usual June, that was like a big sort of driving force about, well, who is our main character? Where does she live? What sort of town is she in? What sort of extraordinary things does she get to experience? And as we filled out the cast of characters through this town, and even the town like Fen Harbor it takes place in, all of this is coming from like Adam and I and a lot of our collaborators sort of growing up and being around these flyover states in the United States. So like I'm in Michigan, I'm in the Midwest, and like why are things sort of swampy and weird, and these weird sort of layered histories of like who actually founded your town? And in the US, it's kind of strange if you start digging in to these places as people were sort of like settling the West. So I don't know, I would talk about this forever, but I love telling stories about the sort of people that I would bump into in my own city and talking about sort of the layered histories of these Midwest towns they do have a lot of culture and a lot of history.
Well, I remember, so my second GDC, I was still getting my bearings. I was still learning the industry. I came in from journalism, so I knew video games and I loved video games, but learning the industry itself was very new to me. And I remember putting together finalists videos for the IGF Awards and the Game Developers Choice Awards. And I saw the footage for Tunic. And I remember being blown away by the artistry in a way that I hadn't really before, because it felt both timeless and new. It had that mix of Zelda with really, things that didn't, hand walk you through it. You really had to get challenged. It was actually one of the first games I bought specifically because I learned about it at GDC and I wanted to know more. Did I finish it? That's another story that I will not get into because the answer is no, because it's very hard. But the success of it really had a lot to do with social media, the campaigns that were coming out, word of mouth. What surprised you the most about the response to Tunic?
Tunic was really interesting because I could actually give a 4-hour workshop on what was weird about Tunic, because you've already mentioned like the Zelda component of Tunic, and like that is very like right in your face. It's it has nostalgia just in its imagery. It's like a fox and a tunic and a sword. Like it's even green. Like you can tell where its roots are. But until you play it, you don't actually immediately see sort of the Dark Souls Bloodborne component of it. And you said it's really hard. It's like, yes, because there's a lot of Dark Souls inside of Tunic. So early on, when you're sort of just showing Tunic, one of the main marketing components of it is like, and there's secrets. You play as a fox with a sword, and there's secrets. And the whole point of Tunic is you as a player discovering those secrets. The manual is a big part of that game, and you're discovering those secrets as you're discovering those manual pages. So you can't, as a person showing the game, talk about the game. You can only talk about the experience you as a player are supposed to have going into it. So we really couldn't say a lot. So there was this really funny thing. It was like on an E3 giant bomb couch, maybe years and years ago, where somebody's like, "Yeah, Zelda like a fox," or it might have happened in our Discord. But we used to joke about like, "Oh yeah, Tunic, Zelda like a fox." But that's actually terrifying going into a launch where people think it's Zelda and think it's nostalgia and not Dark Souls. So a big thing that we had to do was ensure that we didn't absolutely piss off, if I'm going to use like the term uh, on a podcast, the Zelda fans, but also not completely piss off the Dark Souls fans. And both of them want a very different game.
Tell me a bit more about that messaging, how you made sure to balance keeping those secrets while marketing the game successfully in a way that players would understand, especially since you had two such different sides coming together for this experience.
So for a really long time, we sort of traveled around with our very first demo, which was 15-ish minutes long. And it's like, fox, you get the sword, you fight some monsters, and then the Garden Knight kills you. And that was it. And that's all we showed. And like you collected these manual pages, but like the manual pages, you used them because it told you how to use a controller and what buttons were important, which was like really smart. Andrew's early design on that was, really spot on. But it was all in the same sort of, runic language. So the conversation always was like, well, do I need to be able to read this? And we're like, no. Is it a language that you can translate? And we're like, no. Obviously a lie, because that's one of the secrets. But like, you don't have to translate the manual pages in order to understand how to play the game. And early on, did Andrew know that this was going to be, what is it, 36 pages or something in the manual? Did he know that the manual was going to be that long? No, games take forever to make. Like, that's part of the iterative design process. So it looked like Zelda from the beginning. It played like Zelda. People might have been a little like, ooh, this combat's a little hard, but it was early on in the game, so it wasn't surprising or super difficult for people to get into, which was an amazing marketing tool right away. However, we started seeing like everyone's like, the Zelda like. It used to be called Secret Legend. People couldn't remember what the title was called because it didn't search well. So people would be like, yeah, the Fox game, which is a marketing problem if nobody can remember your title. So before the E3 reveal with Xbox in, I don't know, 2018 maybe, maybe 2017, no, 2018. The game was renamed to Tunic, and then it was actually renamed maybe even the year before at a show. But we renamed the game, made sure it was easier to search, and it fit really well. And we had like a document of probably like 200 names or something. So we're just, what about this? What about this? And Tunic stuck. But we still had sort of the same problem because now we were in Xbox console launch exclusive. Xbox was showing that original trailer that was still very Zelda-y. And like, we just kept bumping into like, yeah, but it's Dark Souls. So what does a combat demo look like? If we're going to drop people in, and this is sort of also when Steam demos, demo days, Next Fest were starting to become a thing, like what does it look like to drop a longer combat-focused demo where I don't need to convince anyone of the secrets, but I do need to convince people of the combat. So we can tell and signal to Dark Souls that this is for you, but also signal to these same, not make it so hard, but also signal to the Zelda people like, hey, there is combat in here. So you need to understand, like, this is not just a Zelda-like. So we had a combat demo, and we ran with that, and it was much longer. It was like maybe 30 or 40 minutes long. And we turned that one on often. For any of the online events. If we went to PAX, we would often turn that one on while we were running sort of the shorter demo on the show floor. And that was sort of like the kickoff to this whole, how do we ensure that press on launch day know what the game is? And after that combat demo, which was maybe the year before the game launched, that was our countdown to launch. So at some point, we knew that we were going to be shadow dropping on Game Pass. So we knew that no matter what, people would be able to access this game for free on day one. And we needed to ensure that they didn't drop it right away. But we also needed to ensure that all of our reviews on day one understood what the game was. Because the thing that we couldn't talk about, because we could talk about Zelda, we could talk about combat, we could not actually talk about secrets, which is the entire foundation that this game lives on. So we did something really risky. And we basically set up an entire Discord server that we NDA'd press into, and we treated them as a first audience. So this was their community because Tunic has what we call out-of-game effects. So people have their pen and paper, they're drawing stuff, they're noticing things. Like people look like conspiracy theorists sometimes, like with notebooks and stuff, trying to play the game. And we knew that that was going, like, in order to do that, people don't do that solo. But journalists also don't understand who's also reviewing the game. So we set up a Discord server that we moderated as if it was our Finji community server. So we had, no data mining. You had to be cool. We had locked channels, so you had to pick up a certain page before you could go to the manual page before you go to the next channel. And there were spoiler tags. You weren't allowed to, we treated it as if they were a post-launch audience. And if anyone was not cool, we were like, hey, you can't be in here anymore. And they found sort of their out of or post-launch audience, but we watched them in real time respond to the game in the exact same way that our day one players responded to the game. But the after effect of that was they were completely obsessed. They were already trying to translate the language. We saw them get the secret ending in real time before launch, and they were really funny. On the Discord server, they're because we didn't allow the devs on at all, so it was just sort of Finji marketing kind of watching and Finji QA. Because we're sort of looking at somebody having issues with it. Let's pop them out, make sure they we don't have any tech problems because this is a pre-launch build. We were sort of watching them on. It was a Saturday morning. I was sitting at my kids' basketball games, and they were so close to figuring out sort of that last secret in Tunic. And everyone was sort of popping in from the Finji side. And at some point, somebody's like, oh my God, I think we might be close. Look at all the Finji staff that are online right now on a Saturday. And we're in admin, just oh my gosh, are they actually going to figure this out? And it was so gleeful, as us, oh my God, it's working. Tunic is working. They're doing this in real time. What an incredible experience. And they're legitimately losing their mind on this server. And that's when we knew it was going to work. But we had no idea. It was so risky to run that because we knew that if they didn't have that out of game experience, that they weren't going to really understand maybe what Tunic was. So on launch day, we launched, we didn't have anything to do with this. They made FAQs. They made spoiler things. They did massive write-ups. They talked about their experience playing with people in these out-of-game effects. That's what we hoped would happen. That is not, it's a hope. It's experimental. It's taking risks because there was no other pathway through this. And we did it in the most constructed, hands-off, following all of our Finji rules way possible, which is always really fun for us because whenever we do something like this, we always have a really good process and schematic around it. Because it is risky. It's incredibly risky to put a bunch of journalists in a server before launch and be yeah, no, we're doing this on purpose and we're not actually going to tell you why we want you to play the game this way. That is part of the experience of playing the game. So yeah, it was a lot of things of just how do we get them? We had fixed Zelda, we had fixed combat, but how do we fix secrets on day one? And yeah, I could really talk about that forever.
And I mean, a lot of that is messaging and marketing. But when we talk about game marketing, it often feels like it gets pushed to the back burner. You have to have the game first before you can market it, especially if you're a smaller studio or a solo developer. So what would your response be to someone who says, I'm just going to wait to do my marketing until afterward. It's not really a priority for me. I can use social media. It'll market itself. Why is marketing an important tool for developers to have?
So on one hand, they're kind of not wrong, but also they don't understand often that marketing, they're already doing it. Like, your game is your first and best marketing tool. So, like, people are like, well, marketing is doing advertising, marketing is posting on social media, marketing is whatever. Like, no, it's not. It's a good screenshot of your game, and the game design is marketing, and marketing is just weirder game design. You're designing for culture and people, which is like, it's literally a Venn diagram with game design. Because if you talk to any game designer, they're designing for the player. All a marketer is doing is designing the communication to talk to the player. You've already done it. You've designed the UI, you've worked on onboarding, you've built demos to get people onboarded. It's, I'm not kidding, it's the same thing. You're just talking to people about it. So, like, saving it for later, talking to people late, like, it's not that you can't do it already. You have the game already. It's just you don't have the time or you don't have the confidence to do it. So it feels like it's more of like you need to walk across a bridge to understand that there are like minimum viable product kind of, but for marketing for indies. There's a lot of things available to you, and you are already sitting on the most powerful marketing asset imaginable, and you work on it every day when you open Unreal or Unity or Godot or whatever. You are just doing it already.
How would you advise developers to walk across that bridge? Because, marketing isn't something that's necessarily going to be in their wheelhouse, especially if they're a one-person studio. How would you advise them to cross that boundary and get the game out there in the way that can help them get success?
One of the first things is it's literally talk to people. So a lot of people are like, well, I can't post on social media and talk to strangers. I was like, I'm not saying disclose a bunch of, the general public to what you're making. What I am saying is you have 10 billion indie developers in 10 billion different Discord servers and small communities and local communities that understand the development process and will literally talk to you about your game. So we had an experience years ago, and we published Panoramical 2015 or 2016. And we used to take it to shows, and we had like one thing, and we would show up as sort of with a little mixing DJ thing. I can't think of what they're called right now, but Panoramical is sort of like a music game where you control the music, but and all the notes, but you're also controlling the alien landscapes in the background. So it's almost less game and more of a experimental experience. It's really, really cool. But a person at a show was like, hey, so this feels like the Fantasia of games. And it's like one of the smartest things that anyone had ever said to me. I didn't say that, but telling me that Panoramical was the Fantasia of games, or the Fantasia of game experiences, was like so eye-opening of how I should talk to people about Panoramical. When you are making something, you have blinders on. What you think is interesting about your game is absolutely not the most interesting thing about your game at all, because you are a developer. You are building it, you solved problems that were tricky, and those carry more value to you personally. But if you go and talk to other people and listen to them explain your game back to you, that's half your marketing right there. They're going to probably tell you half of your elevator pitch. They're going to tell you what's going to resonate with a player, because it's possible that they are your future demographic and your future niche player or your day one purchase. And usually the problem is, like, nobody goes and talks to anyone about anything ever. And if they do talk to them, they don't listen to what they're saying back at you. And my challenge for everybody, even like when we take our games to shows, is listen to everything they say. If somebody says a phrase that seems really smart, just jot it down. Pull out your notepad, and like, you're not looking for bugs, you're looking for words. How did they describe the game to their friend when their friend came and sat down next to them? But you can see it also, like, watch streamers after your demo. They will also market the game back to you, and the chat will also tell you about your game and about what other games your players are playing. And like, as an indie, that does not take very much time to do. I mean, that's what we were doing even 15 years ago.
I really love that analogy because it reminds me of, a common advice you hear when you're giving an elevator pitch. Talk like you're talking to someone at a coffee shop or at a bar, that you're having a one-on-one conversation, that you're not pitching something. But this is one of the first times where I've heard it might actually be a good idea to actually just let them pitch it back to you. So instead of talking to the person at the bar or the coffee shop, you're listening to the person at the bar. And I really love that idea. I think that's a great model for marketing. And also, one, takes some of the responsibility out of your hands, which is always nice when you have a lot going on. And two, it means you're talking to real people as opposed to putting something in Chat GPT and seeing if you're going to get a response back. You had mentioned that this was something that you were doing even 15 years ago. In marketing, things change so fast right now. I mean, just 3 years ago, everything was Twitter X, and now it's really not. So how would you say game marketing has changed in the past just few years, especially for smaller developers?
It's so there's so many avenues to pay attention to. And thank God there's tools to assist with that, because if I had to tell my social media manager, hey, you have to individually track Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Steam forums, Discord, I don't know, Instagram. Where else are we at? Game Jolt. I could just keep going forever. We post on so many places. If we didn't use Hootsuite, we would die. But even my tiny team, we have to be okay, so where are we actually going to engage actively? And then we have to build rules for every place of how are we going to engage with these audiences in these various places. So we only have so many eggs in baskets, so which ones are we going to put them in? We can post lots of places, but that doesn't mean that we have to or can or are expected to actively engage in all of those places. So we are very small. So this is a misunderstanding of Finji in general. People think we're 50 plus people, but it's literally me, and it's Aster, my social media and community manager. That's a big job for one person. And then I have my marketing lead, and Emily is sort of more on assets, marketing strategy, shepherding our projects from when we bring them in or when we're working on them until ship and launch. So she also helps out with launch management and things like that. So the majority of social media, with the exception of what Emily's sort of helping Aster with, is done by Aster. And then we do have a community assistant to help with our Discord. So that's a single person for all of these platforms that we're supposed to be posting on and drumming up. Reddit, oh my gosh, Reddit's a whole other thing. Drumming up audience. So you can't be everywhere. So you have to think internally, well, what am I best at? Where are the players for my game at? And what is that Venn diagram? What's most interesting, most fun, and most effective? And that's where I can spend my time. But with tools like Hootsuite, it means that I'm cross-posting on Facebook. I cross-post there mostly because we also advertise over on Facebook, because it's a really powerful tool. It's not because I actually love advertising. It's just because it's powerful and we're drumming up wish lists. But we are cross-posting there. So Aster is not over there doing an insane amount of work with engagement. But we are active. So we don't disappear, because there is audience for us there, and that is the only place that they exist. And it used to be way easier 3 years ago. I could just advertise on Twitter and be done with it. And it was so much easier to manage. But it's just, there's too many now. And each one of them has different rules. And we only participate in the ones where the rules best fit our expertise and it best fits our game and is most interesting for us to work on.
And how do you determine which ones are the best for your voice and the best for your audience?
It's the type of games that we make. So I am lucky enough to have sort of legacy players, and I'm a publisher as well. Tunic and Exocolonist and Night in the Woods and Chicory. These are my publishing projects. But then we also have Cannibal and Overland and Usual June, which are internal development projects. So we sort of have this weird, diverse library. And there's a massive Venn diagram between that's my whole life. I just think about the world in Venn diagrams at this point. but that's also the brain of a marketing person. It's just Venn diagrams of audience. So we have all these games. There's a lot of overlap, and like some of these audience or some of these player audiences are like, maybe 2, 3, 4 million people when you're sort of looking at a Night in the Woods or a Tunic, or it's much, much, much smaller. So we're looking at like maybe 150,000 people or 150,000 players or less when we're over in like maybe Chicory, which is more than that, but Chicory or Exocolonist or Overland's technically over in the millions, but they have a lot of diverse interests. They're talking about things in various places, and like they also are overlapping our games. So we have very specific, like the tried and true Finji audiences, and we call those our day one players, people who have to buy that game on the first day that it comes out. And we do a lot of work to identify, and I'm going to use a stupid marketing term, but activate our day one players, because they honestly, in a lot of ways, matter the most initially at a game launch, to sort of push our game up the list, ensure that all the work that we did on collecting their information, that they trust us enough to spend any money full price for the game. And we have a pretty good idea of who those people are just because of the type of games we make. We make games with stories about things that actually like matter to real people. Like we talk about places that you want to be in or places that feel familiar. Telling stories that people care about matters. And that's even like within Tunic, like I'm not a fox with a sword, but you're telling a story about who I was as a kid and how I played games and how I experience play. Like that's part of that. So we kind of know who those are, and we spend a lot of pre-launch time identifying our primary audience. And that can be done, like I'm looking at comparables. I'm looking at our past games, what audience in our past games is most interested in this. I'm looking at niche communities. I'm looking at even demographically, like is it like the silent majority? Is that who's going to play my game? Or is it like the really vocal, like a Night in the Woods audience is a really vocal online audience? Just because somebody's loud doesn't mean there isn't a bigger audience sitting someplace else. It's just they're the most loud online. So we spend a lot of time identifying, like, is it a silent majority audience or is it an online audience? Or is it a Venn diagram of the two? So we talk about this a lot, and then we try to figure out where they're hanging out online. Like, where are they? And we recently discovered there's a surprising number of kids that never left Twitter, which was upsetting to hear. But also I'm like, oh, well, that means they're posting all of their fan art of Night in the Woods or whatever over on Twitter. Do they know that we're still there and that we need to find that fan art? Because their fandom and their adoption and identity adoption into like the game and art that we create matters a lot to us. But that's also a big thing with Finji is we have a tendency to make something that I call identity games. And that is sort of an after effect of the types of stories or experiences that we have in our games. People adopt something about that game into their identity long term. And it can be across a lot of different aspects of our games, but I think that's really incredible about the designers' works, like on our projects, that they are so talented that they're able to do something like that, to create sort of a long-term fan or long-term joy of a game or a piece of art in like a person.
I can't imagine how incredible that would feel, seeing somebody creating fan art from your creative project, creating these expanding universes. Like I'm a cast member at our local Renaissance Festival, and just last weekend I saw someone in Night in the Woods cosplay at the Renaissance Festival, and it shows how there is such a power in social media. There's such a power in fan communities, and we have those tools to get out there. You were talking about using Hootsuite and using these places to get the word out. Where do you splurge on those tools and resources, like paid marketing, different social platforms? And where can people perhaps maybe invest a little bit less either time or money into, in your opinion?
Yeah. So we've actually started doing so um, we have recently opted out of going to most shows. And it's because our booth has to be so big at this point that we have to sell so much merch. And pre-pandemic, we could do it, but post-pandemic, between how much merch we have to sell, sort of the difference in the audience that are attending shows and why they're there, but then also we have to send, 8 to 10 people, which shuts down our studio for like a week to staff these shows. We're just like, woof, where else could we use this budget? So for the past year, we've been in a very, very small amount of money each week. We're talking like $200 a week or something is what like we are looking at. We have been doing wish list advertising, and like that sounds like woof, really. But we are spreading this across a lot of our posts. So we put a small budget over on Instagram. Are we doing promoted posts or not? And what are we doing? Are we growing an audience there? Are we looking for increasing followers, or are we looking for increasing wish lists? So we're always navigating like, what is our call to action? Are we asking people to play a demo that we have live? So because we're active on Instagram, we're active on TikTok, we're active on Facebook, we're active on Reddit, and those are Reddit's like more long-term advertising. We're sort of looking for those Venn diagrams of who is our day one player and where are they hanging out online. And then we're just trying to get them to see our trailer. We're trying to get them to see our content because they already know about our past games. And we need to remind them that they have another one coming. So make sure you wish list it so you remember that it exists. And our budget for this is teeny tiny, but it's because I don't have that PAX budget anymore that I have to like sort out. And it's so much cheaper for us to do a lot of experimentation to find where these audiences are. Because it's like some really, really weird stuff that we've been trying. We're like, well, how does the Sailor Moon audience respond to our usual June trailer? Like, it has nothing to do with video games, really. It's an anime audience. But like, what an amazing amount of data that came back. And you can throw like $100 at it and just see, does it resonate on this at all? But it's also fed into how our content needs to be on these various platforms. Like TikTok really needs to have talking. It just can't be a trailer. Like it seems really obvious, but you can run side-by-side comparisons on this to get as many new eyeballs as possible and see which one performs better. You can see the comments of complete strangers, what resonated with them. And since we are not out talking to people all the time, this sort of like at-home research is like super valid and useful for us. And we have pulled, I mean, most people would, especially anyone from a larger company, would be like, oh, you sweet babies, this is the most embarrassing advertising work I've ever seen. But we're indie. I don't have a lot of cash to throw at this. Like my reputation is much bigger than the amount of money that Finji spends a year to stay in existence. Like we are not that big. So pulling a budget I would usually be using on something else, like flying people places. That's a much better use is now I'm finding more audience in a different way because I can only get maybe, 300 butts in a seat at a show, 400 butts in a seat at a show to play a demo, but I can find 400 eyeballs on Friday in a different place. And weirdly for us, like if I like we run one Tumblr ad, which is crazy. Some people here are like, I haven't heard about Tumblr in years, but I make identity games, which I didn't even have that term a year ago. But like people who love Finji games and love identity games are on Tumblr because that's where their fandom is. That's where they're doing fan art. That's where they're doing like, fan fiction. And like, it's a really interesting platform that still exists. And like the advertising setup on Tumblr is legitimately terrible. And it's blaze a post. You can blaze a post and they will burn your entire budget immediately. There's no like partitioning it out. They just burn it. But you will see every like Friday or Saturday, we get a spike on our wish list. And that's our Tumblr spike. It's wild. I wouldn't say anyone else go throw a bunch of money at Tumblr, but if you're making a narrative game that is likely an identity game, you'll probably find your audience. You're going to find an audience on Tumblr. For sure are.
I mean, getting creative is probably one of the best ways that you can compete with those larger studios as a smaller one. You can't market in the exact same way that they are because their reach is automatically going to exceed yours, not just in terms of audience, but also in terms of budget. What was the most surprising audience crossover you've discovered so far? You mentioned Sailor Moon, which is amazing. Are there any other ones that stand out to you?
Honestly, I have no idea. We've experimented so much. There were a couple of anime ones that really surprised me, but I can't remember the titles of them because they're all acronyms. So anytime we're like, it's this audience, it's like, it usually is some weird acronym for the hashtag, which Aster and Emily would totally remember. There was one week where like a spicy fantasy author, I think, found our stuff and like reposted it or something on Tumblr. And that was a very strange week. And we had to we're like, what was our connection point to this person? How did we even get there? Um, I, yeah, that's that. It's mostly like it's almost surprising what is not working. Which like sometimes it'll be like movies that we think will have a good overlap. Movie audiences are very strange, and like the overlap into movie people and game people online is not super tight. Um, I think they're movie people and game people are game people. I'm both, so like I would be that one unicorn. But if you are hashtagging movies, it can sometimes be a little weird. Another one is like, YouTube sucks unless you have a game that's out, kind of like unless you have like a new trailer. Like YouTube advertising is not great. Um, on any axes, we've tried it with all sorts of things. Uh, but yeah, it's almost more surprising when you like we're always trying to figure out like why did we script the Venn diagram, kind of like if we have two or three different fan bases that we're targeting, um how are the comments, like how is it being overrun with a certain fan base? And you can sort of tell that often with the comments. Steven Universe always does really well for us, whenever we use that in something. And then also Kingdom Hearts is a great audience for Usual June, which we weren't sure about at first, but are always shocked by how well the numbers do on that. Um, if we link up with Spider-Verse, that always does really well because that's the most common, um, one of the most common comments is like, "Oh, this looks like Spider-Verse," and we're like, "Thank you, that's so flattering." Um, so yeah, I don't know. And also, you did ask a question just a little bit ago about, where do we put most of our money? We also run influencer campaigns when we launch stuff. We're not actively doing that right now, but our influencer campaigns are usually pretty experimental, very fun. We had like Kim Joy make a cake for Exocolonist back in the day, and that was like I think Kim Joy like won Great British Bake Off one year. But like you can just do really really fun influencer activations, because you're trying to find whoever the audience is that's watching that influencer, even if it's tangential to games. You want them to be interested because they also play games. They just also happen to like this particular influencer. Um,
If I could follow a bit about influencer campaigns, because that is a newer entity in the marketing space, and it can be very successful, but it also could be very risky because you're kind of putting a lot of eggs in one basket, and influencer campaigns can be a little bit expensive. So how do you make sure that you're picking the right influencer, that you're picking the right audience with it? What goes into that decision making?
we always go into it with a strategy. So I'm not necessarily looking at, um, I would never give money to one influencer. Like I would go in with like, what is my budget? Or what kind of budget can I pull? Um, and sometimes that can be as low as like, I only have $3,500 for this. Or maybe I am pulling $25,000 and woof, that is like a lot of cash for Finji to be dumping into an influencer campaign. Um, so if I'm looking at something like that, what I want is, one, and this was described to me by Aster, so I can't take credit for it, and that's my community social media manager. Aster said, if we're looking at a small budget, we want to look for influencers who influence influencers because those exist. So if a certain influencer who has obviously a really wide audience, but also is setting the trends often for other influencers. If you're trying to push things out really far for your particular genre or style of game or audience, if even if they're expensive, even if they might take up 50% of your budget, that particular type of influencer is super useful. And they're also often, like for ours, like at least 3 of the ones we've recently worked with, they're just fans of our game, like, and our work, which is even better because they're like, sometimes they'll be like, I would just love to work with you. I'll give you a 10% discount. And I'm like, that's really sweet. You don't have to. But also, like, thanks, because that means I can throw, $500 over the fence to like this up and coming influencer to do these posts. So we're always looking for like influencers who influence influencers. We're looking for these mid-tier influencers who probably are fans of our game and have a buying population, like a buying viewership, which often demographically is going to be at least in college. So we never go with like celebrities to younger people generally, because they don't have money to buy a game. If I were doing something post-launch and I was like doing merch launches or something like that, it would be different. But usually on a first launch, I'm looking for mid-tier buying playership. And then I am looking for, often we set aside a smaller budget on the side for up and coming influencers who are definitely going, or they're just like expanding their audience and maybe have never been paid to do the work before. And that's just because we want to. We like their work. We think they're really interesting. We would love to pay them for the work that they're doing. But on top of that, we also are looking at, like, for exocolonists, this one was really fun. We did an entire cosplay budget for I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. And we contacted a bunch of cosplayers. We showed them the entire cast of characters. And we had like a character video at this point. And we're like, which one do you want to do? And then they did, making of the cosplay video. Then they did their photo shoot. And then sent all that stuff back to us, and then we were able to run them on social media. We were able to retweet them, but we were also able to use them on things like the PlayStation News store for Exocolonist, and we were able to show off the cool cosplays as part of our PlayStation like actual store page, which is a really cool tool. And that might be one of the ones I'm most proud of. And I didn't pick any of the cosplayers. We worked with ICO to sort of identify the sort of cosplayers we wanted to work with. But ICO Marketing, they're in Brighton in the UK. So they sort of helped find all of our cosplayers, because Lisa, who used to work at the studio, was a cosplayer and had done just incredible work. We had people on launch day who would never have played Exocolonist and who were like dev friends and stuff. We were like, dude, I am seeing these Exocolonist cosplayers all over my social media. How did you do this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, careful curation. I didn't think that I could do it by my own. I asked for help from people who know cosplayers, know cosplay communities. We worked with a really diverse cast of cosplayers, and we paid them to do fun work, and they didn't have to make the most crazy costume ever. They just had to pick something that resonated with them and then take some photos and then show us, how did you make it? That's really cool. And we would edit your videos. Like, send us some information. Show us a list of materials that you bought. And we will pay you for this. But yeah, I love cosplay influencer marketing. And I love working with cosplayers in general. Like, I think their work is incredible. And they're often, especially when they're doing cosplay for themselves, they are some of your number one fans. Like, anyone who's willing to like build that costume, put that many hours with it, and then wear it for your fans at a show, just because that's their hobby. Like, you should be working with these people. They are artists. And they are literally doing the work for you, like out at their conventions and everything else.
That is just amazing. I'm so in awe of cosplayers just as a hobby and as a profession. It's one of those things where I've always wanted to do it, but then I just like, I just don't have the time. So my last question, we've been talking a lot about, we've been talking to, game developers and game studios about how to get into marketing and understand marketing. But I want to close out by kind of going a bit in reverse, because we also have a lot of marketers who are entering the game industry. What would you want them to understand about marketing games and the marketing game audience?
I love this question so much. So I was I was yelling, as one does, when you're sort of talking about your own discipline. Like, yes, I'm a CEO. Yes, I do biz dev, but like my heart is in uh, creating culture. Like that's what I'm most interested in. And the thing that makes me want to throw my computer out a window is when I pop on to anyone's store page or I see anyone's marketing campaign and it feels like what I am being sold is a television. It is just a list of boring features. It is like, thank you for selling the game as TV. It's game as product instead of game as experience, game as culture. You don't see a movie being marketed as a television. They don't say like there are going to be 7 characters in this game and you're going to get to talk to 2 of them and you're going to get to go to 15 locations. You're welcome. And you're going to get 22 rifles. And you're just like, what are you doing? Like you can put that in some boring feature list somewhere else, but like what are you selling me as an experience? I don't go to a movie so someone can feature list me. Like, I don't care that there's 5 characters and one of them might look like me. I don't care. What you need to tell me is what emotion am I going to have? Why would I invite you into my living room to sit on my couch to have like, I want to be a mech fighter fighting dinosaurs. Like, and it's Ben's game that he launched last week, but I'm just like, that is a fantasy. Sell me the fantasy. Don't sell me a TV. And that is the piece that, like, as marketers going into games, like, and maybe this is just me being like old and crotchety, but like, this is my art form. Like, I don't make games, I create places for the games to exist. And like, the people who make games are some of the most amazing people in my like whole life. Like I'm a better person because of all the designers and developers and collaborators and the indie development scene that exists. Like I am better because I've been surrounded by this just onslaught of like creative stuff for the last like 20 years of my life. And when you sell their stuff like televisions, you are not understanding that like these are experiences, this is an art form. And yeah, the art form might be you're a mech warrior fighting dinosaurs, but like that's the fantasy, that's the escapism. So like tell us about that. Like, yes, I'm making a game about a young woman who can talk to ghosts, and it's a location like Fen Harbor. It's just like the Midwest, but not a single thing that I tell you there was, and she has X many weapons and this many throwables and this kind of whatever. And that's going to matter at some point for some reviewer somewhere. But like, why is somebody going to pick up a game about June? Why is somebody going to see June and play that game? Like, what is going to resonate? And like, that's the same thing with word games. Like, you don't play Wordle because you get to try a word 5 times. Like the fantasy is you're trying to outsmart the game. You're trying to use your extensive vocabulary to like process of elimination, do it in as few as like it's an internal challenge. It's not like, well, you get to use this many letters and that particular piece, like if it, and so often marketers are not coming to games from games. They're coming to games from outside of games. They're not developers. And like they may not understand this. They may not have played. They may have been in like me growing up in the 80s and 90s. I didn't even get to have my own console. I was a girl. I was not expected to play video games. Those were for the boys. So they might be coming to games not really understanding what they are or having a stereotype of what they are. And games are everything. They're beautiful experiences. They're going to make you cry. Like they're these 3D first person shooters. They're also these like sprawling talks about like genocide and colonization and everything like that. That's just exocolonists, but it's like built into a card battler. Like they can be everything. So you have to approach them as culture, just like movies and music and art. Like it's so important. And once you start doing that, you start asking the right questions. So when you're pitching stories to media, you're not like, here's my review keys. It's like, how does my game overlap culture? How does my game overlap movement? How does my game overlap politics? Because art is politics, games are you can't divorce humanity from the things you create. That's just it's just not it's not possible. It's a reflection of humanity. That's what games are. And like I would love it if one, the suits valued that, but also marketers coming in, instead of feeling like they're fish out of water, of like, I don't understand games, I'm not really good at playing them. Oh, I'm bad at a controller. It doesn't matter. I suck at games. I'm terrible at them. I can't beat anything. I'm legitimately the worst. But I see the culture. Somebody can play a game. I can ask a lot of good questions. I can like poke at the person, like, well, tell me why. Why did you do that? I can be curious about the movies and music and things that are happening. Like, why did the designer pick that? I can dig up old references of games and watch videos of things. Like that's the piece that I think is so important. And like developers should be doing this too. You should be more curious about the thing that you're making. You should interrogate why you put something in there because it is likely a reflection of your own or the humanity around you. And that's going to help you. It's going to help you write your press releases. It's going to help you pitch media stories. It's going to help you write your store text. It's going to help you figure out what screenshot you should even use in a game that's, 500 hours long, depending on what game it is. You just, that is how you should be approaching this. Like from a foundational strategy point is it's a reflection of you. Like that's what you're making. That's what your team is making.
Well, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And we've been chatting with Bekah Saltsman, CEO and co-founder of Finji. Before we close out, I just have to know, what is the most recent game that has moved you? A non-Finji game. It has to be a different one because all the Finji games are moving. So this is an outside one.
That is going to be the hardest question. Okay, this is going to be a really okay, it's a stupid answer, but I know it's not a stupid answer. I'm going to own this answer. So, Alan Hazelton just launched, and I don't even know what it's called. It's the sequel to Cosmic Encounters. It just launched. It's a thinky game, like last week. So, Cosmic Encounters came out on the iPad a million years ago, and my children, who are now 12 and 14, were quite young when that game came out. And my little one, who's 12 now, he'll be 13 in February, used to sit down with an iPad and play this original game. And it's basically like a train. It's like a puzzle where you have to like drop things off and move things around. And I came home this week, and this has just been sticking in my head all week. And I sat down next to him and I was just like, this game looks really familiar. And I hadn't been paying attention to what was coming out, so I forgot that Alan's game had launched. And I was like, Adam, did somebody do something in like Alan's wheelhouse? And he's like, this is Alan's game, Bekah. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But Finnegan was sitting there playing it, and I nearly started crying on the couch because I was watching a child who, last time I saw him play this, he had apraxia, so he didn't talk super well until he was like 5-ish. So when he used to tell me about Cosmic Encounters back in the day, I understood one out of every 100 words he tried to say or something. And he was teeny, teeny, tiny, little squeaky voice. And I'm sitting next to this like 5'7", nearly 13-year-old, like in 7th grade, and he's playing this, and I'm watching him just rip through these puzzles. And Alan's games are not easy. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like I'm watching the growth of my child's rational thinking skills in like real time and through games. And like Alan would be probably like so delighted by the story, but I was so excited to see this and like see it at such like a weird small scale, like on my own couch. And like that's the game that moved me. And it was because I had this experience of this teeny child learning puzzles for the first time, and then sitting there and sort of explaining these puzzles and how they work to me, just like on a Wednesday night or whatever on a Steam Deck on my couch. And it was just really beautiful. And like I love that about games. Like I love like especially being a parent, having kids that play as well. And on top of just making them like it's so integral to like our house and our experience in our house and raising our kids. It was like this is amazing. Like this is what my child chose to do is revisit a title he hasn't played in a billion years in a way that he's never played it, and having just a wildly different experience with it. So that's weird answer.
That is not weird at all. I mean, I'm a parent as well, and just the other day I pulled up Costume Quest 2 from
Love
Double
Costume Quest.
Fine. So good because it's Halloween time. I thought he might enjoy it. And watching it through his eyes was just a fascinating process because all he wanted to do was the trick or treating. And whenever there was a monster there, the first thing he would say was, "That's a bad house." It was incredible. Well, Bekah, thank you so much for chatting with us today for the GDC Side Quest. Congratulations again on the announcement for Usual June. I saw it's coming out sometime in 2025. When can we expect a release date for it?
Well, I'm going to side-eye 2025 strongly because it's not.
So 2025-ish.
It will be sliding into someplace else, but we're like when you get into like that last sort of like year-ish of development, which you're in for what feels like ever. Like the last year feels like 3 years. It's just so exciting every week watching things come together. So like I'm just excited. I'm excited for us to finish it. I'm excited for our QA team to get our hands on it. I'm excited to market it. We have like we have a thing coming out today. I'm just excited for everyone to ship it because we have a lot of first time collaborators. This is the biggest game they've ever worked on. And like watching them sort of grow through this process of making something for the first time is, it never gets old. It's partly why we publish and mentor so many teams. It's just really, really lovely to make things with really smart and brilliant people.
Hey, Beth, that line, that bit of discussion about how a lot of marketers in games don't come from games, that felt real spicy.
I would actually feel the exact opposite. It was not surprising to me. I mean, I have that own experience myself. I come into, GDC Festival of Gaming through journalism. I was not a game developer going into game industry marketing. A lot of marketers are coming into this industry from other fields, or you go to college to study marketing. And while they might very well be fans of games, a lot of times they're also new to they're new to the industry. They might even be new to video games altogether. It is an intergenerational experience, and the more generations experience games, the more we have people who play them. But it's important to approach it not just from a game to marketing standpoint, but also a marketing to game standpoint. It creates an empathy cycle.
Yeah. Anyway, Beth, it's so great to have you working with us on the Game Developer Podcast team. I just want to say, for our listeners at home, like I've been following Beth's work since her days at IO9 before this, and I was really excited when she joined us because she's been sort of one of the people who, as she said, even though she doesn't come from games, she's been very key about helping us and GDC Festival of Gaming like keep tapped in to what is going on in the game industry, to helping communicate with the people who go to GDC, to the people who help make games wonderful, like Beth was saying earlier. So y'all are in for some amazing conversations down the line, and it's really nice that we on the podcast, you get my perspective. Now you can get Beth's perspective and other great people.
Oh, you're going to embarrass me.
Aw, Beth, what other topics do you want to hit in like the next few months?
Absolutely. I plan on covering community management, which is a really big field for me. I also want to go into production. That's a big one. And that's one I'm going to be learning a lot about myself. Game production is such an important part of the process. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm actually really excited to learn more.
We'll be back next week with our own amazing guests on the Game Developer Podcast. For more from us on Game Developer, be sure to visit www.gamedeveloper.com. Our theme music today is from Mike Meehan, and the episode was edited actually by this person, Beth Elderkin. Beth, do you know who that is? Do you know who this Beth Elderkin is?
I am vaguely aware. I've met them once or twice.
Yeah. Be sure to also follow us on major social platforms and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Blue Sky at brianfrancis.me.
And you can follow GDC Festival of Gaming on Blue Sky, on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to make sure you're getting your updates. Be sure to subscribe to the newsletter. We're actually making some updates to it that I'm really excited about. It's going to be having more news, more information, more interviews, more creative content to really inspire our audience. And also be on the lookout for State of the Game Industry. The survey is currently out, and the report will be coming out in January 2026. I'm very excited for it. And be on the lookout for our GDC Insights reports throughout the year, our Trends report, basically all the other things that I do that require writing multiple pages and then getting very tired.
Well, speaking of getting very tired, I'm going to go take a nap. Bye, everyone. See you soon.